Over the few years I've been involved with Austin Sevens, I've progressed from being utterly terrified to drive one further than the end of the road, right up to driving to Belgium and back. As my fears dropped away and my confidence in driving what equates to a rather pretty souped-in on bicycle wheels grew, I found myself with more time to enjoy the landscape as it passed by, instead of constantly preparing for the next gear change. With this change in pace, I started realising there were a few little things that these incredible little cars would benefit from that either didn't exist when they were made or weren't considered important enough to include. And please don't get me wrong, I don't consider any of the modifications below essential. You can quite happily get by with the 7 in its original form, and there is a definite joy to that experience. For me though, sometimes if I'm in a tiny car for 6 hours straight, I wouldn't mind a bit of convenience. So here are a few things I've added to Tweety that might be of interest. Indicators, for me, tops the list of anything I've done. I love hand signals, I really do, and there is definitely some satisfaction in achieving the feat of slowing down to a left-hand turn while changing down gears and pulling on the handbrake because your brakes are uncoupled. But I am finding more and more that other drivers on the road do not understand my hand signals. So, for the sake of those people who are unlikely to learn them purely for my sake, I consider indicators to be a good idea. My first consideration was that I wanted them to be bright when on, but inconspicuous when off. That ruled out a lot of the usual candidates, and I eventually narrowed it down to LED motorcycle indicators, which can be found inexpensively at the usual sources. The one drawback of the ones I wanted was that they were 12 volt, and Tweety is of course a 6 volt system. The fine folks at Classic Regulator and Dynamo Conversions were able to supply me with a 12 volt inverter, an LED flasher unit, and a little beeper to tell me when the indicators were active. All this was mounted on an aluminium plate, which was then fixed under the passenger seat next to the battery. The whole thing is its own separate system, linked directly to the battery, and I found it to be robust and effective so far. If anyone's interested, I do have a wiring diagram that I drew up that I can make available. As I was putting a 12 volt inverter in, it seemed rude not to install a small USB charging port behind the passenger seat, which allows me to charge my phone or a power bank on the move, for those instances where you're away from mains power for a while. My phone, incidentally, serves me as a sat-nav while I'm out on my trips, so a firm mounting point seemed useful. This one's designed for motorcycle handlebars, which happen to be roughly the same diameter as an Austin 7 steering column. This one clamps on firmly, and then can be adjusted into a comfortable position and locked off. I've been over some very excitingly textured roads with this, and it hasn't budged an inch. Moving further along the dashboard, last year I went on a trip to Belgium, and decided it would be a good idea to have something that allowed my speedometer to read kilometres per hour to match the signs over there. This little 3D printed ring is something I made up to do just that. It slips over the bezel of the speedometer, and tells me how fast I'm going in metric. As a side note, I also painted the numbers to glow in the dark, so I could see how fast I was going at night. I forgot, however, that the needle would also need to glow, so that didn't work quite as planned. A recent acquisition was this modern copy of an original dashlight accessory. It bolts to the dash and can swivel in a number of directions to either read maps or illuminate your not quite as glow as you hoped speedometer. I fitted it with an LED lamp and coupled it into the tail light circuit to make sure it doesn't get left on accidentally. An essential accessory for any long solo journey is a cup holder. This is a stainless insert I bought that slips into a steel bracket I fabricated that clips onto the lip of the passenger glove box. It's the perfect size for a drinks can or bottle, which suits me perfectly. Moving to the back seat, the astute amongst you might have noticed my back seat is in fact a little high. This is because I have constructed a box which clamps to the seat support structure and raises the seat itself by 5.5 inches. The seat itself is hinged to the box with some special hinges I made, and can be locked in order to provide a relatively discreet and secure place to put valuables whilst on a trip. Finally, in order to record some of my adventures in more detail, I've bought a 360-degree camera, and in order to raise it up for a better view, I've constructed this little mast. It's machined from aluminium and steel, and clamps onto the gutter of the roof quite firmly. There is also a secondary attachment in the form of a cord that clips to the wing mirror, just in case, but I've tested it at Tweety's top speed of around 40 miles an hour, and it certainly seems very stable. That's all the modifications so far, although I'm sure more will come in the future as I continue my quest to keep Tweety running alongside modern traffic in relative safety and comfort. That said, nothing improves your odds of getting where you want to go in one of these more than taking your time and not rushing. If anyone has any interesting modifications they've done to their 7, I'd love to hear about it, so please do let me know, and thanks for watching.